Hello, and welcome to the CivilNet studio. Here at CivilNet, we long brought you stories and the latest news right from the ground in Artsakh. And while that's no longer possible due to the ethnic cleansing, the stories of the people from there and what will happen to them are vital to know. So now we're following up with the efforts to resettle the displaced Artsakhi's here in Armenia. One of the organizations doing that is the Paros Foundation, and its executive director, Peter Abajian, is here to tell us more about it. So thank you so much for joining us, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, Paros began back in 2006 to strengthen the educational infrastructure and develop Armenia's border villages. I know from experience, past 12, 13 years, just traveling around, I ran into you multiple times, once way up in Sunik, another time way in Davos, right on the border with Azerbaijan. We could see their forces right there looking over us. And you were there trying to set up businesses and finding economic opportunities for them. So I know what you guys do and want the people at home to know more about it as well. So you've been working with resettling Artsakhis, not just from the 2023 ethnic cleansing, but also just since the war of the 2020 when we already had refugees coming. So how did Paros determine what way to respond to these tragedies and what to do?
Quite honestly, it was a real challenge. We knew right when the war started in 2020 that we had to do something. And obviously in the diaspora, what's the first thing everyone does is contribute money or want to contribute money. So we opened a fund and we started collecting funding. And we pretty soon thereafter identified housing as one of the initial things we were going to have to focus on in the longer term. So while the war was taking place, we were helping with refugee assistance and food and heaters and all these kinds of things that a lot of the other organizations were doing. And we were helping deliver medical supplies and, all of that immediate refugee and or wartime needs. Soon thereafter, when we realized that there were, tens of thousands of Artsakhis that had taken shelter in Hayastan and were planning on not returning, because they either had lost their homes or they were in such a community that they were terrified and wouldn't want to return to Artsakh. We identified that as a potential second loss for us. We had a devastating war. We lost territory. We lost countless soldiers. And now, we were afraid we were going to lose another 10 or 20,000 people to Russia or to France or to the US, et cetera. So we launched a housing program, not knowing how many homes we could purchase for families and how many people we could relocate, but at least we'd give them hope quickly. So I think within a month or so of the war end, we announced a housing program and we started interviewing families, identifying who they are, how many people in their family, and where they were currently living, what they had lost in Artsakh, what they came with, what they were able to take out. And then we looked at the community that we were looking to house them in, and were they interested in moving into that particular community.
So how do you, select the locations that you're moving them into? I know there's quite a few different places that you're putting them.
It was, we thought it was best to work with communities that we were familiar with. As you said in our intro, the border is a priority for us. We want vibrant border communities. We want prosperous border communities. So we had already done a bunch of infrastructure work in Nerkin Garmirakpur and already had done some work on individual housing, renovating homes for people. So what we did in that particular community was start buying up houses, homes that nobody lived in and nobody had lived in for the last 20, 30 years. Most of the homes were absolutely wrecks. They were piles of stone. And we purchased those homes, renovated them quickly, and then moved families into them. So Nerkin was a community that we were familiar with. We knew that it had solid infrastructure, a good school, vibrant kindergarten, medical center, et cetera, water, for instance. So we chose that community. And then as we had purchased essentially all the homes that were available, we looked at the next community. In the next community, we went to Medzmasrik, which is outside of Vardenis. And that community is also on the border, also had abandoned homes that we could purchase. Prices were reasonable, and there was interest in moving to that community as well. So
now, an initial thought I have when it comes to settling on the border is economic opportunities are usually not as great there, but though I know that's part of what Paros does. So is there like a synergy between the projects you do in trying to build up the economy and giving the jobs to these people that are moving in there, or how does that work?
Yeah, so initially in Nerkin Garmiach Bureau, in our first community, we had partner organizations that, we would do the house, the renovation and provide the home, which was the majority of the assistance for that family. But Focus on Children Now would furnish and buy all the appliances for the family. And Salman NGO initially stepped up with 8 houses and provided the economic package. So, helped them with a barn, bought a couple of cows, did a greenhouse for families, and these kinds of economic packages, because, farmers farm, or, people in villages need those kinds of things to live on. So that economic package became a part of our model. So after the partnerships ended and we continued doing this, we tried our best to identify other organizations or individuals that wanted to give that family their economic package. And it wasn't substantial. It was around 1 million drums, $2,000, $2,500. But that's enough to get them established so they can provide the basics for their families in this village community.
Now, how do you choose the beneficiaries? I mean, of course, you can't control who becomes a refugee. You're going to get people from all walks of life. But are there certain ones that you focus on more, or it's kind of all comers?
It's a combination. So we initially identify the house. So we have a house that's 4 bedrooms. So that 4-bedroom house might be good for a large family, 6 people, 8 people. So you look at, we've directly interviewed more than 200 families from Artsakh that have taken refuge in Armenia, over this last 5 years. And in those, you figure out who really is committed to staying in a community, who has a particular tie to a particular community. Nerkin Garmiach Bureau is 3.5 hours from here. Meds Maastricht is 2 hours and 15 minutes from here. So it's people that want to live in that community, want to understand that community. We even took tours. We'd take a minivan and put 2 families in and take them up to the community and let them understand what the community is all about, see what the school's like, see what the medical center's like. Understand if they can fit into that community. And, we didn't want to just drop a family member, one Artsakh family here and one Artsakh family there. We wanted to create little communities for them. And we wanted the villagers to welcome them because they knew that it wasn't just the Artsakhis that were benefiting from, Paros and bringing them to town, but, their school benefited, or their medical center benefited, or their water infrastructure benefited, so that it became a family. And we were pretty successful in both communities. The refugees we resettled there were welcomed with open arms and have become vibrant members of the local communities.
So what are some considerations when it comes to, making this resettlement happen? I mean, that's a big undertaking, and these families are in really vulnerable situations. So there's got to be a lot of challenges.
There are endless challenges. The most important thing we did in this process was work with the family over a period of time. We typically didn't randomly pull a family out of a hat and say, great, you win the house. We would interview them, we would go back, we'd stay in touch, they'd stay in touch with us. And over 2, 3, 4 months, we'd have a sense of, is this family stable? Does this family have any issues? And of the 40 families we resettled in Armenia, and the 8 families we resettled in Artsakh after 2020 and before 2023, we only had one family that decided the house wasn't for them. And after they moved in a couple of months, they decided they were going to relocate to Russia. So they gave us back, their portion of the home that they owned. And we took the next family that was a match and we moved them in. So the children, the camaraderie, the economic opportunities, one family had a couple of disabled children and they wanted to be in a particular area because it was close to where their children could get special services. Other families were very comfortable with sheep, and Meds Maastricht has a pretty established system of sharing, custody over the animals and taking them to the fields, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot of puzzle pieces that come together, and I'm thankful that we've been successful for these families.
Perhaps you've seen some changes in the families and the kids especially. I mean, they come here with a lot of trauma because of what they've gone through. Has, getting settled had an effect on them? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, after, between COVID, the war, the end of the war, and then the blockade, these children have gone through unimaginable trauma. Schools in and out of schools, no school, some school. And then the stories of them leaving everything behind and their friends and this and that. It's pretty traumatic. And that stability with a new home in a community where people have welcomed them is unbelievable. It's really, really meaningful to them. There's a lot of need for, trauma psychologists, and, the school in Nerkin and the school in Meds Masrik both have, stepped up and done special things to, make the Artsakh kids feel special and not like refugees that have been resettled. And that's excellent. It's absolutely what our people do, right? We welcome one another, and these people were welcomed into the community, and they've contributed, and and it's gone both ways. The local established businesses have given Artsakh families that have resettled priority if they need a shop worker or if they need a farmhand or something, and the Artsakhis have done the same thing. So there's a couple of Artsakhsi families that have several heads of cattle where they've now launched a milk production thing, and they needed some help, and they've hired locals. So it's really integrated. There's been weddings between Artsakhsi families and locals. There's been new children born. The school numbers have increased in both Masrik and Nerkin and Garmirakpur. So they've had to hire more teachers, and they've had to it's opened more doors. It's all been very successful in these two particular communities.
Well, it's great to hear the positive changes that can be made, because there's a lot of negativity out there, and fortunately, unfortunately, in the diaspora, I feel like there's a big concentration of that, because they also, in their own way, have been traumatized by the war. They feel like it's just one thing after another. We've been attacked so many times over the past 5 years. And then there's tons of just chaos with the government, and people unhappy about that. Some people swear off Armenia now. I'm done with it. And the Artsakh, there's a lot of negativity, which is another issue you could I'll have a whole interview about. But that said, in this environment, and by the way, also a difficult economic one back in the US as well, money is needed to make this change happen. So, what do you do? How do you navigate, there's some burnt outness, and, what do you do in the face of this to keep this going?
I'm a really good cheerleader. Look, if I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't do this work. It's just not possible to continue. I feel like for the last 5 years, our community of people like me and you have been banging our heads against the wall for, how many defeats can we take? But I played high school football. I was a lineman, and my job was to push forward, and that's what we do. We put our heads down. We try to stay true to our mission, and we try to relay that to people. And I'm grateful for a venue like this to be able to talk to our folks back home and let them know that we're getting stuff done. 40 families may sound like a lot, or it might not sound like a lot, but that 40 families translates to 200 people, 225 people, 250 people that have taken root, that are aware that the diaspora cares about them, and are living their lives, living their roles, and contributing to their communities now. In addition to that, 200 folks we've helped, thousands, I don't know if it's tens of thousands of, folks from Artsakh that came that needed immediate assistance, rent, food, clothing, because literally after 2023, they came with nothing. 2020, some of them had a chance to bring some stuff, and we helped transport stuff, but 2023, they came with the clothes on their backs and maybe their paperwork. So they needed a lot of help, and and we've tried to step up for that, and we've helped facilitate other Armenian Americans to be involved and get that stuff done. People that wanted to send clothes, people that wanted to, come and help or buy food and deliver. We tried to help facilitate those things. And that's all we can do. Raise awareness, keep our heads down, do our work, and try to spread the word. So.
Well, it's great what you're doing, and yet people at home, if they want to come and volunteer with you guys, I know that you're open to that. And
absolutely,
it's a great way to connect with Armenia beyond the noise of social media and the endless negative news. There is so much positive happening here, and Paros is one of them making that happen. So thank you so much for coming here and letting us know, Peter.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate your time and the attention of your viewers.
And thank you for joining CivilNet.